A very good morning to all of you. Today, our topic of discussion would be critical summary, which is also known as critical appreciation. We have already, written summaries about poems, about stories, okay. But for the first time now, we are going to attempt a critical summary. First, we have to understand how is a critical summary different from a normal summary. When we are writing a summary of a poem, the entire writing of the summary is focused on the poem and the poem itself. But when we are writing a critical summary, we have to start with an introduction about the poet, about his life, and how is his life connected to the writing. So that will be, we will be dealing with the poet's background along with the poem itself. So in a critical summary, to make it more simple, in a critical summary, we have to connect the poem with the poet. Okay, so a particular work, let's take for example the poem The Brook. It was written by Alfred Lord Tennyson. The Brook is a poem where Alfred Lord Tennyson is talking about the temporary nature of human life. Now coming to that, where did Alfred Lord Tennyson come across this idea? He came across this idea when he lost his friend Arthur Hallam at a very early age. Arthur Hallam, he died at a very early age, and because of which Alfred Lord Tennyson, he got the idea, or this idea strikes his mind that life is temporary. Life should not be taken for granted. Okay, so life is temporary, and he draws a contrast. He draws a contrast with the permanence of nature with that of the temporary nature of human life. Okay, so here is a contrast being drawn between human life and the life of nature. We all know that nature is not everlasting. Nature itself is not everlasting, but it can outlive human lifetime. Okay, so that is clear. So now coming back to our point, today's topic, that is critical summary. So our topic today is critical summary. Critical summary. So while writing critical summary, what are the crucial points that we have to keep in our mind? So just like any other answers, I always suggest we always divide, separate, or categorize your answer into three parts. Divide them into three parts. Okay. So what three parts? The first part would be an introduction. The first part we deal with the introduction. The second would be the body part, and the third would be the conclusion. So for any good answer, whenever you are writing a good answer, these three parts will comprise a good answer. Okay, so what are the three parts? The first part is the introduction. You can separate them into different paragraphs. Okay, so the first part will be introduction, the second part is the body, and the third part is the conclusion. Okay, so now keeping that in mind, let's understand how to write a critical summary. So this is our framework, this is our structure. Okay, this will be the structure of our answer, and in this particular structure, how we are going to deal with critical summary and what are the points that are to be included and in which section. We have three sections for our answer. Okay, so that is the structure for our answer. We have three sections for our answer. Now in each section, what are the things that need to be included? Okay, what are the things that we are going to include in each section? So that is what we have to understand now. Okay, so starting with the introduction part. Okay, I hope you have noted it down. I'm going to erase it. Okay, introduction, body, conclusion. Okay, now let's start with the introduction. What are the things that we are going to use in the introduction? In the introduction, first and foremost, we will be talking about the poem and poet. In the introduction, we will be talking about who is the poet, okay, when did he write this particular poem, okay, and what is the poem about. Okay, So what are the things that we are going to write? Who is the poet? Okay. When did he write this poem? Okay. And then when did he write? And like, what is the poem about? We can talk about the theme. We can talk about like what is the poem actually speaking about. Okay. So first, in the introduction part, we'll be talking about the poem and the poet. And what about the poem and the poet? We'll be talking about who is the poet, when did he write the poem, okay, and when did it get published, okay, and then what is the poem about, okay, what actually the poem is talking about, okay. So that is the part that we are going to deal with in the introduction, okay. In the introduction, we'll be talking about the poet, okay, about his life, okay, about the background of the poet, and then what about, yes, I have to write it down also, the background of the poet. We have to write a little bit about the life of the poet, okay, about the life of the poet we have to write a little bit, okay. We have to write a little bit about the background of the poet, we have to write a little bit about the background of the poem, okay. So here about the poem, okay. Now when we are done with this, our introduction part is over, okay. We don't have to write a very long introduction, okay. So our introduction part will include about the poem and the poet, the who is the poet, when did he write this poem, what is the poem about, and the background of the poet and the poem. So that will comprise our, like the introduction part, okay. After that, just a minute. After that, we have the body part. Now, what are we supposed to write in the body part? Okay, what are the points that we are going to include in the body while writing a critical summary? Okay, so in the body, we will be giving a brief description or summary, a very brief, okay, a very brief or concise summary of the poem. We'll be writing that in the body part, and then we will be talking about the different themes or the background that is being used, okay. We'll be talking about the theme or the background of the story, okay. Suppose it's talking about a story, for example, let's again take the example of the poem The Brook. Here Alfred Lord Tennyson is writing the poem The Brook. What is the background of the poem? The background of the poem or the theme of the poem, which is talking about the mortality, which is talking about mortality. Like human lives are temporary, it's not permanent, and the background is the death of his best friend Arthur Hallam. Okay, so that is the backdrop of the poem. Okay, so that is the background of the poem. So we'll, in the body part, after giving a brief description or giving a brief summary, we'll be talking about the theme or the background or the backdrop of the story. Then we will be talking about the technicalities. Okay, we'll be talking about the technicalities. Now, when I say technicalities, what do I mean by actually saying technicalities? Remember, we did literary devices, the different literary devices that are used in a poem. Yes. So, in the technicalities, we will be talking about the literary devices. Okay, we will be talking about the literary devices. We will be talking about the literary devices. We will be also talking about the rhyme scheme. Okay, we will be talking about the rhyme scheme, and we will be talking about the meter. Okay, we will be talking about the meter of that particular poem. Okay, so we did the introduction part, we did the body part. In the body part, we have the brief description or the summary, theme or background, technicalities, which includes literary devices, rhyme scheme, and meter of that particular poem. Okay, so this comprises our body part. Okay. Now coming to the next part and the last part, that is the final part. The third part is the conclusion. Okay. So in the conclusion, generally what we do, we state our remarks, we leave our comments, okay, we give our observations, isn't it? So in this particular, while writing a critical summary, okay, then in the conclusion part we have to state what observations. Okay, we have to state observations like the poem, what are the critical, issues being, brought up by the poem. See, suppose, let's take for example the poem The Ozymandias of Egypt. Okay, in that particular poem, which issue is being highlighted? Okay, so the issue that is being highlighted in Ozymandias of Egypt is that of monarchy, isn't it? So that is what we have to state here. Okay, so that is our observation as a reader. Okay, as a reader, our observation was that, this particular poem is talking about, monarchy, or the, ill effects, or the, the demerits of monarchy, of a monarchy system of government. Okay, so that is what we have to state. We have to state our observations there. Along with that, we can also give a remark. Okay, we can also give a remark. It's not like the poet has written a very wonderful poem and we all enjoy. No, not like that. Okay, that is not how we write a remark. Okay, in the remark, what do we have to do? We have to state our analysis. Okay, analysis, like you are not judging the poem. You are not judging the poem. You will be talking about, like, a particular factor in the poem which was, which actually played a vital role, or which played a crucial role in the poem. For example, again I am going to cite the example of the brook, where we have this refrain: for man may come and man may go, but I go on forever. So this particular refrain is used, in repetition. Okay, it has been repeated 4 times. Okay, it has been repeated in 4 stanzas, and the purpose of the repetition of this particular line, and the purpose of using this refrain, was to state or to deliver the idea or a message that human life is temporary and we should not be, taking it for granted. Okay, so that kind of things that you can include in the remark. Okay, and finally you can conclude your answers here. You can, sum up your answers here. Okay, so that will be the 3 parts: introduction, body, and conclusion. Okay, so now you know what you have to do in each part. Okay, again I will do a quick, recap of what we did today. While writing a critical summary, the first part, in introduction, we will be talking about the poet first, then we will be talking about the poem, and we will be talking about the different things, like, how the poet, when the poem was published. Okay, how the poem came to write, how was the poet influenced to write this particular poem. Okay, so those are the things we will be including in the introduction. In the body part, we will be talking about the different background, themes, and we will be giving a brief summary of the poem first, then we will be, talking about the different themes or the background of the poem. Okay, all the stuff, and then we will be talking about the technicalities, like what are the literary devices used, what is the rhyme scheme, what is the meter of the poem. Those are the things we will be including in the body part. Okay, and then coming to the conclusion part. In the conclusion part, we will be just giving a, a feedback kind of thing. Okay, so we will be writing a review. Okay, so in that part we will be writing about, this was a thing that actually played a crucial role in the poem. So that is what will comprise our critical summary. So these are the 3 points, and I believe you have all noted down what are the things that are included in each of the 3 points. Okay, in the 3 sections. Okay, the first is introduction, and body, and the conclusion. Okay, one more thing that I would like to point out: all poems, okay, that you will be writing a critical summary about are not similar. They are not same. Although it may seem like, in every poem there is a poet. A poet will be writing a poem, okay, and the poem will be talking of using different literary devices. So things will be similar. No, are never similar. Okay, so no 2 poems are exactly alike. So what you have to understand is that, especially about talking about, conclusion part, when you're writing a remark, when you're writing your observation, at that particular part, you cannot write, go on with the same tone for every poem. Okay, suppose in Alfred Lord Tennyson, he is talking about mortality. So you are focused on talking about, for man may come and man may go, but I go on forever. Okay, so that is the part that you can include. But what about Ozymandias? For Ozymandias, can you use that kind of a conclusion? No, obviously, no, we cannot use that same conclusion. So what we have to do? We have to understand that each poem is different. Each poet has a different style. Okay, so keeping these things in your mind, okay, then you go ahead to write a critical summary. Okay, so that will be all for today, and if you have any doubt, you can get back to me anytime. Thank you, everyone.